All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started. I appreciate everyone being a part of the committee. And I really was just joking about you not being busy because I know you are. And I just appreciate the fact that you're giving time and opportunity for Deanya to present her proposal or defense and to move to the next step of becoming a doctor. So I know you've all been through this process, so you know Deanya is probably a little bit nervous. I know she will do well. And she is extremely hard worker. She's worked very hard on this, so something to be proud of. So with that said, again, thank you from Garner Webb for participating in this and for being a part of it. The format Deanya will present. We'll ask questions as we go. We'll go into a breakout room for us to discuss the dissertation, and then we will come back and share our findings with Deanya. So that said, Deanya, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you. Good morning, afternoon. Thank you for joining me during your busy time. I know that you're busy and I really appreciate you taking the time out to be with me today. I'm going to start my presentation. See if I can move you. Okay, I'm going to start my dissertation defense. And if you have any questions, please stop me and I will try my best to answer all questions. My dissertation is on a qualitative study on the effect of the teacher-student relationship on student academics and behavior. I'm going to briefly go through chapters 1, 2, and 3, and then discuss chapters 4 and chapter 5. And then if there's any questions at the end, feel free to ask me those questions. Starting with the statement of problem, the obstacles standing in the way of students who have come from improvised circumstances. Students have a lot of things to deal with before they can even begin to think about learning. Teachers continue to work in their established approach without any changes, believing that they're great educators. And that's something we need to do, is to work on teachers, making sure that teachers become better and better every day. Unmotivated students being a disturbance in the classroom. We know if students don't have anything to do from the teacher, they'll find something else to do, which causes problems. And then there's a disconnect between the teachers and the students. And disruptive behavior continues to cause students to drop out and then teachers to leave the classroom because of so many problems occurring. The statement of the problem: as educators can and must make a difference in the lives of students of poverty through education for the benefit of society in general. And this is something that Jensen did a lot of research on, and we're going to talk about more about his research and other researchers. The purpose of this study is to investigate and create an understanding of the impact of the positive teacher-student relationships on student achievement in a high poverty, at-risk school setting. Our research questions are: how's a teacher-student relationship essential to a successful learning and environment? And what are some of the mindset changes necessary for teachers to maintain the positive relationships with these students? And the third question, research question, is: to what extent do teacher perceptions of their interactions with students influence the academic and behavior success of these students? Theoretical framework comes from many researchers. I began researching for chapter 2, and chapter 2 was getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Dr. Stone calmed me down, so pretty much broke it down, but I'm going to discuss some of those. School culture is a necessary component of the framework. In democratic schools, students are given the opportunity to voice their opinions and make decisions. The fitness to teach involves the power of perceiving how far a scholar understands the subject to be learned and what to be learned. Dewey stated that teachers need to be agents who are able to distinguish what attitudes are beneficial and detrimental to the continuance of student growth. The process of education requires schools to contribute to the social and emotional development of the child if they are to fulfill their functions of education. And then Langer researched on if the source of information is someone we respect, then we're more likely to be influenced to receive that information than if it was someone untrustworthy. And classroom management is critical for teachers to enjoy a positive relationship with students. A theoretical assumption is that Dewey also researched and talked about the belief in education is to prepare children for active citizenship and partake in democracy. And back to that democracy again, focusing on deep understanding the impact of teacher-student relationships in the learning environment through thorough examination. The empirical assumption is based on observations. Students who are surrounded by a democratic setting and a strong teacher relationship are able to learn and prepare for a successful future. The limitations were 5 elementary female teachers within the same district, or 2 observations, 1 interview, and 1 post-interview after each observation. And then there was a 6 weeks journal writing. The study lasted for 6 weeks. There were digital observations, interviews, and journals. The researcher is a behavior specialist and teacher with positive teacher relationships for at least 16 years. The significance of this study is to prepare all teachers with the ability to form positive relationships with students, provide classroom management strategies for teachers on positive teacher-student relationships, to lower teacher turnaround, and to build student success. I'm going to briefly talk about chapter 2, the history of the public education, the challenges of teaching in the public school system, national initiatives, and innovations of teacher effectiveness. In chapter 2, I talked about different schools, and I'm gonna briefly touch on a couple of schools. Factory model schools is highly developed tracking system that stress rote learning and unwavering compliance for children of the poor. And then there was a traditional school after Civil War where the teachers have an authority over students. They really wanted to run the school like the armies was ran. And students were denied the right to choose. The students were just supposed to come, sit in the seat and listen to the teacher. And whatever the teacher thought that student should be once they grew up, that's what they were supposed to work on. And then there's the democratic schools. Students given an opportunity to participate in active roles that prepare them for civilization, equal voice in governance, developing the ability to get along with others so that you're prepared to get along with others once you are in the job field. And if you know that and notice that these different schools seem to show up more and more every day. It's like we're going around in circles. But I really think the democratic school is the way to go. The philosophy is, and back to John Dewey, and I did a lot of research on John Dewey, using relationship knowledge to build worldwide educational experiences for teachers. Democracy, again, as part of education. And all children should be prepared for active citizenship and partake in democracy. And the school should be a place where students learn to be great citizens and have the ability to change society. Democracy in the classroom, teachers being committed to democratic practices, allow students for free and independent thoughts. The students actually having a voice within the classroom and within the school. And also the teachers having a voice within the school. And culture influences of learners. Society looks to schools to develop common values in its citizens. Schools are held responsible for the social and economic disparities. Um, Chapter 2, I talked about the high poverty areas that do not perform well as the middle and upper income students. And then there's a gap. And Barton talked about the achievement gaps that exist across the nation. And they're very large and they're getting larger. And we have done a lot of things to try to close those gaps, but they seem to keep coming back. If you look, Nieta talked about the gaps that cause problems with the high rates of failures, high dropout rates, over identification of special education, and behavior problems. And then there's a teacher-student relationship. Effective teachers engaging with students around curiosity, interests, habits, and the mindset of learning. Teachers have to relate positively with students. And then when they do that, they experience joy versus anxiety. And then that makes the teacher want to come back year after year after year. And students develop a love of learning when interested in their work. Positive teacher-student relationships develop self-regulation skills, evaluate and manage behavior, reach academic and personal goals, and then reducing failing grades. Effective teacher knows their students formally and informally and consistently assists in making significant academic progress. Chapter 3 talked about the methodology. The methodology is to investigate the effectiveness of teacher-student relationships on academics and behavior and an influence on the student's future. Research design is a qualitative study, and I did a qualitative study because I was looking for the story of these 5 participants, what they do to make a strong teacher-student relationship, so that one day I will hope to do a professional development where I can teach other teachers to be strong in their relationships with their students. I use interviews, journals, and observations for them to tell their story. There were 5 participants. It's digitally recorded and videotaped observations and interviews. Due to the pandemic, I was not able to go in the classrooms like usual. So I use Google Meet and also Zoom to videotape the teachers and observe the teachers. I use code blocking also on Google, and then Google to transcribe the responses. What I did was during the observations, I opened up a Google Doc and then voice recorded the observations and then went back to the transcriptions, looked over the transcriptions, made sure all words were right, and then gave the participants an opportunity to look through the information and make sure that the information was right before I began coding. This is just a table showing you what I used. It was qualitative, which was a sociological perspective. The 5 participants was the instrument. The interviews was used to tell the experience and show the experience of the participants. The observations was used to show the social aspect of the participants. And then the journals were to show the thoughts of the participants that were not shown in the observations and interviews, because they told a little bit more personal things in the journals than they did when I was interviewing them in observation. It was more like the interviews, they were telling me what they thought I wanted to know when we first got started, but then they open up more, and then in the journals, they really open up. Chapter 4 is the results of the interviews, the journals, and the observations that was analyzed through coding procedures. My findings from the coding procedures was the themes, events, and topical markers in the interview. Participant journals examined through the narrative permits transformation of knowing and then telling the participant's story. It was ended up generating 5 unique case study reports. So I have 5 reports from each participant. The Marziana observation protocol rubric is what I used when I was doing the observations to show the characteristics of the good teachers. I also used the TESSA, the teacher expectations for student achievement, to interpret the teacher and student relationships. On these tables, you can see where I used the Marziana observational protocol. And what I did was I wrote notes and I broke it down into each research question. So I looked at the design questions in the Marziana observational protocol and the design questions that went with the research questions. And then I jotted down evidences. So when I went back and I coded, I went back and looked at each participant and found the things that they had in common. And some of the things that they had in common were like asking questions, noticing when students are not engaged. And then also the TESSA interaction model, I also went back into the coding and looked at the things that they had in common. And these are some of the things that they did have in common, which you can see on page 105 in the dissertation. Then I broke it down into research question. The first question was, how is a teacher-student relationship essential to a successful learning environment? And then you will see that during the coding, I looked at the interviews and the journals, and I looked for common comments. And then it was broken down in frequencies. And the frequencies were 5 was general, 3 to 4 was typical, and 1 to 2 was rarely. And you can look at the chart and see that majority of the participants pretty much had the same comments. And to me, it was like amazing to see that they had the same comments. And then looking at the research, they was pretty much saying the same thing in research, even though they were coming from different schools and they had different students, they pretty much used the same comments. And research question 1, how's the teacher-student relationship essential? Positive teacher-student relationship provides an opportunity for teachers and students to enjoy teaching and learning within the classroom that would influence the motivation of learning. Participant 4 quoted that we all want to be cared for and valued by the significant people in our lives, and students are no different. Then I have where I broke it down into themes, and I started off with code words, and I had like a lot of code words. So I made posters and then I broke the code words down. I went through and coded the transcriptions and I coded them again. I think I may have coded them about a million times. But after going through, I started breaking it down into themes because looking at all of the words was very confusing. So I wanted to break it down to show, to see what they were really saying. So it was broken down, and research question 1 pretty much showed the theme of relationship culture, classroom management, high quality instruction, and engagement. And then I tallied it by looking at interpretive codes of the participants and wrote down what the participants, which participant was actually using that theme. And as you can see, majority of the participants use each theme. Research question 2, I did the same thing, broke it down into themes. It talked about the mindset changes necessary for teachers. And the themes were relationship, culture, classroom management, and high quality instruction. And then there were interpretive codes that I looked for each participant. Looking at the interview and journal, I looked for common comments, and some of the common comments about the mindset changes were the importance of consistency and patience, well-managed classrooms, and all children can learn. And these are some things that we hear all the time, but knowing In order for a teacher to be effective, a teacher has to know these things and really believe these things. The mindset really went back to the research of Jensen. Jensen researched 4 essential mindsets, and they were relational, achievement, rich classroom climate, and engagement. And they were very similar to the findings in the study. And the pathway followed by the participants were relationship, culture, engagement, high quality instruction, and classroom management. And as you can see again, the theme, the teacher perceptions for question 3 were relationship, classroom management, and high quality instruction. And then again, you can see with the question 3, the interview and journal, and some of the common comments were positive feedback, consistency and relationship building, and developing relationships, maintaining positive relationships. And then if you look at the chart, you can see that majority of the participants pretty much said the same thing. And this can be found on page 92. A teacher's perception is shown to be very influential towards the academic and behavioral success of students. The summary of the research questions, the teachers clearly believe the positive and supportive relationships they have with students play important roles in the academic and behavioral successes in and beyond the culture of the classroom. The 5 predominant themes were classroom management, relationship, culture, high quality instruction, and engagement. Chapter 5, discussion. Poetry and narratives of the 5 teachers developed from the results collected through the observations, journals, and interviews. Schools should provide environments where teachers and students work together to learn and grow. And teachers should influence and guide learning through positive relationships with these students. Having a voice and a sense of belonging builds healthy relationships and connections with peers, teachers, administrators, and the greater community. And teachers must and can develop positive relationships with their students so that students have an opportunity to prosper in society. I did get some questions from the committee, and I'm going to try to answer some of those questions. If you have any more questions, please let me know. Middle and upper classes see more from school because of the culture of the school, and it's based on the culture of the greater society. Shield talks about, quoted, to ensure that we create schools that are social just, educators must overcome silences about such aspects as ethnicity and social class. The journal entries pretty much went hand in hand with the information. It was like the participants had the same minds as far as relationships with their students. The information was repetitive and very close to the research in chapter 2. I only use effective teachers with positive relationships. So I didn't have enough from each school to interpret if there was a school trend. I had 2 teachers from one school and then 1 teacher from the other school. So I really couldn't tell if that was a school trend. Recommendations for future research is professional development to include trainings that consider teacher-student relationship. And this is something that I really want to do. Teacher selection instruments that identify teacher candidates who have skills and ability to develop positive relationships with students. Teachers developing SMART goals pertaining to relationships with these students. Performance evaluation instrument designed to measure the teacher ability to maintain positive relationships with students. And each school having a system in place where every child has an advocate, at least one other adult in the school besides the teacher. Future research needs. Research conducted by a researcher who does not work in a district or have professional relationship with the participants. Research conducted in diverse areas, also in a larger district with more participants. Research conducted in the middle and high school to see if there is a difference in the relationships, and also conducted with male teachers and extracurricular and exceptional children teachers. Research conducted over a long period of time to follow students as they change teachers. Research conducted for several years with the same teacher, but different students, and also doing a transition from elementary to middle school. Conclusion of the defense, the observations and interviews were conducted over Zoom and Google Meet. Journals were reviewed for 6 weeks. Each theme was created as a result of the case studies to include components of the teacher-student relationships that affect the academic and behavioral success of the students. And the everyday interactions in the academic settings are imperative to student success. Teachers who recognize and accept the need to build positive relationships with these students are capable of achieving these goals and developing successful students prepared for a democratic society.
All right, are there, before you take away your slide and stop sharing, are there any questions about the PowerPoint presentation or any questions in general that the committee would like to discuss before we go into a breakout session or ask questions of Deanya or comments to Deanya? Okay, hearing none, then Deanya, we will go into a breakout session and we'll leave you and Hope to talk and we will come back. All right, so I'm going to pause the recording in the breakout session, but Deanya, if you'll remind me when I come back or someone to please pick it back up. So is it paused? They're joining me. They got about 35 more seconds to join. I have turned on the recording. So how'd you feel about it?
It's over.
Did you and okay, here we go. All right, so I guess everyone's here, so I can move this. So Deanya, welcome back. Committee, I'm sorry, I'm learning breakout, trust me. Deanya, Dr. Pratt, I should say, I'd like to congratulate you on this milestone, and I'd like to extend from Gardner-Webb University. Congratulations for all the hard work you've done. You and I will stick around a few minutes after this session, but you did a great job, and I'm going to turn it over to the committee because they may have some comments as well. I am recording, so that's good.
Congratulations, Dr. Pratt.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think I just want to highlight, I think that I appreciated the methodology and the effectiveness of the journal as a methodology and responding to some of the key research questions. I would like to see, this is what I do, but more sort of engagement with the race and ethnicity of the teachers and the students. But other than that, I think it was good.
Okay.
Yeah, and I was telling them we're in the middle of dismissal, Dr. Pratt. We appreciate everything you did. I was telling them how passionate you are on this topic, and that me and you agree that this is definitely something that's going to be needed to turn our community and district around. We've got to have that engagement piece, and relationships are one of the biggest reasons that we're not there yet. So I'm proud of you. You did a great work, and apologize again.
I want to thank you all for being there with me, for your encouraging words and motivating me through this process, which has been a lot of work, but I have learned a lot. And Dr. Stone, I wanted to thank you for being patient with me. You are like the smartest person I've ever known.
Really. Now you just thick, you're putting it on thick. You really are, but it's been a
You
pleasure.
are, I
You
can't
already
even,
got the title now. You
I
already
can't,
got
Yeah. Jeez. All right. Well, again, I want to thank Dr. Stigall, Dr. Bennett. Thank you for being a part of it. Dr. Stigall, go and enjoy your afternoon bus duty or car duty. And Dr. Bennett, enjoy the beautiful weather there in St. Louis. So thank you again for being a part of this, and awesome job. Gardner Webb, thanks you very much. Deanya, if you'll stick around, please.
okay. Thank you.
All right, Deanya, really, they were very complimentary. The only thing that you need to do to finish this up, and I will send you to that direction, it will be in your limitations. All right, they wanted you to add something. Where is your limitations in your paper? Oh, here it is, on page 122. And you may have mentioned them in another chapter. Did you mention them any place other than one? I don't think, yeah, you did, chapter 3. Let's look at page 71. And really, on page 71, which where you have limitations in chapter, okay, yeah, starts on page 70. Well, let's don't put it there. Let's go to the last page, which is on page 120. If you'll go to page 120, what we would like before you get to that recommendations, let's see, where does limitation, oh, I'm 119, okay. And then you go into page 20. Before you get to recommendations, we want you to add about 3 sentences about the lack of, one of the other limitations is that this was a non-diverse, because I'm assuming they were all female. So it's a non-diverse group, to the effect of racial, any kind of, were they all African-American? Were they all white?
No,
They were a mix?
yes,
Okay. There were no males.
no males, just females.
All right, so something about a limitation would be that the district, there were very few male teachers to make references to, and that you decided not to do the race of each. So you decided not to do your study based on the race of the teacher and the relationship of the student. Just something like that, and that will be all that you need to do. Oh, and that it was a small sample. Oh, and the other sentence would be something about it was a small sample size. I think you already mentioned that, so you don't have to do that again. But that was all that they had. So you did a great job.
Thank you.
All right, so here's what you need.
You want me to put that in the limitations?
Yes, again, that it was a small sample size, and and you had only 6 journals, or something about the sample size, and you decided not to do the race of the race to look at the relationship between race and relationship, something like that in the limitations.
Okay.
All right, so here's your next step. Once you make this change, I want you to send me your complete dissertation again. I also want your new PowerPoint, because you added some things in there that I need to have on file with your PowerPoint. So make the changes, send me your new dissertation, look at that checklist that you have, and wait to hear from me, because I'll copy you and I'll send something to Dr. Bull, and then be looking for an email from Dr. Bull. And he will tell you at that point what you need to do next with publishing. Go ahead and get your 5 sheets of paper of that hard 24-pound paper from Kinko's. Go ahead and send it to Dr. Bennett and get her signature on it, since she's further away. Once it comes back to you, get Dr. Stigall's signature, because he's probably down the street, and then send it to Wendy.
Okay.
All right, congratulations. You did well, Dr. Pratt.
Thank you, Dr. Stone, for all your help.
You made it. Now, again, we will need to, Dr. Bull sometimes has comments. So if he sends it back and we have to make some more changes, we'll do it, okay? So
Okay.
don't be leery if you get something back from him, because he's kind of what would you say? Picky maybe,
Okay,
but I don't foresee you getting anything.
okay.
And I should have cut the recording off before I said that about him, shouldn't I? You don't share it with anybody, all right?